All right, everyone, welcome back to Get NIST-y, the series that breaks compliance out of the checkbox trap and turns it into a real security advantage. No fluff, no FUD, just practical strategies to make compliance work for your MSP. I'm Jared Kasner, and I'm joined as always by my co-founder of Blacksmith InfoSec and co-host of Get NIST-y, Michael Zabarski. Good to see you. So today we're going to dive into how to leverage how to leverage templates and how to demonstrate progress towards compliance and building your security program. So our first question this week is coming from John from Salt Lake City. John asks, well, sign of the times. We were recording this in February 2026. Clearly some issues with weather, season changing, everything else going on. So just bear with us today. We're going to have some fun. Strap in. So John from Salt Lake City asks, how can I balance standardization, meaning templates, baselines, stacks? I assume you also are talking about procedures here, John, with the reality that every client's risk profile and culture is different. This is a great question, and I love this, John. I love the way you're phrasing this, because I think for every MSP, we want to think about standardization because that's how we go fast. But the reality is standardization falls over as soon as you're talking about a dentist's office versus a law practice, right? The needs of those businesses are very different. So, Mike, you want to talk about some of the strategies that you work with our partners on?
Yeah. So a lot of this is realizing that when you have a template, that does not mean that. So let's start with policy templates. When you have a policy template, does not mean that that is what you have to do, right? There's going to be parts that you're going to have to do, and they're going to be standard cybersecurity language. And there's going to be parts that you're going to massage that make sense for that client. And we see this all the time. Especially for policies like acceptable use policy. One company may allow certain things while another company does not. And so the base framework for the templates should generally be the same. You're still gonna, have a policy clause for, hey, you need to have MFA, and hey, we're gonna have a password policy that's gonna generally be the same. But then there's gonna be pieces that are gonna be a little different, whether a client is using a SIM or not using a SIM, whether they're going to allow people to use artificial intelligence or not allow people to use artificial intelligence or whatever that happens to be. And so you can still leverage the templates, but leave yourself enough wiggle room to be able to massage those templates and make sure that you really do align them to what the client is doing. As far as baselines, there's baselines is an interesting thing because if you're talking about like network baselines, configuration baselines, that is relatively straightforward because all of your vendors are going to say, hey, this is how stuff should be configured. Now you'll always have, exceptions. There's always going to be risk exposure. You take that risk exposure, you register it in the risk register, and you manage it as a risk. Like you're always going to have that stuff. It does not mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Just because you need to have some exceptions doesn't mean you don't use the security baseline and leave everything completely unprotected. And same thing goes for your stacks, procedures. The nice thing about MSPs and what you guys do is you have a stack. You don't have 12 different EDRs. You've got one or two, maybe three.
Yeah.
Right?
They're not like Pokemon where you're collecting all of them, right?
For the most part. But the nice thing is this lets you, at least from a procedural standpoint, work out those procedures, right? Hey, this is how we manage Sentinel-1, or this is how we manage Huntress, or this is how we manage whatever other solution we have, right? And then different MSPs going to have a different stack, and they're going to have different solutions, and they'll have their procedures for how to manage their stack. But either way, no matter what your stack is and whether you move within your stack, right? If you move from, from Blackpoint Cyber to Hunters or something else, or vice versa, you're going to update your procedures. You're going to update how you do things. You're going to update your evidence. But the bulk of it's going to be the same anyways, at least in the policy side. I think that's the big thing where you guys get to really shine with your clients is a general IT department for an SMB gets exposed to one environment and they struggle, they try to support it, you guys get so much more exposure to different environments, different tool sets, different. Hey, this client had this happen, and so we need to think about this for all of our other clients now, right? So it really enables you to take that wealth of knowledge that you accumulate as an MSP and show that to your clients, right? You're no longer having the conversation of, oh, I really don't know how to do this. You can say, hey, three of our other clients had this issue. We've solved this. We know how to solve this. Or, hey, three of our other clients had this issue. You haven't had this issue yet, but have you thought of this? And be proactive and go to your clients and say, hey, um, you know, and this all goes back to the standardization, right? So like your clients are not going to invent anything new. It's like I tell my kids when they complain about life, nothing's new. I went through it. Your grandparents went through it. All of my friends went through it when they were younger. Like, it's funny because they always say, "How do you know we were going to do that?" I'm like, "Because that's what I did when I was your age." um,
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is where templatization, right? So you can standardize through templatization and then have different variables, right? It's a little bit like you don't manage your kids or you don't parent your kids the same way. You don't manage your clients the same way, but there's still a framework, right? There's still a template that you're using and applying that a little bit differently. So let's take session lockout because that's one of my favorite ones to pick on, right? Client A might have a 15-minute session lockout. Client B might have a 24-hour session lockout. At the end of the day, you have session lockout defined as a thing that is non-negotiable for your clients. They're going to have something, and then you've got a variable in there that you can tweak, right? So you allow for some standardization and then allow for the customization, but the customization should be on a client-by-client basis, should be done in a measured way where you are essentially variabilizing that whole process, right? So it's giving you the freedom and flexibility for the clients that need a little bit different treatment, or maybe you're dealing with less sensitive information, to be able to do things and work within the workflow that works best for them. Whereas the ones that need a little tighter controls, you can really lock that down. To Mike's point, you're still using the same tools, you're still using the same framework, you're still using the same baseline. It's just variabilizing the whole thing, right? Let's make it as standard as possible.
yeah, and again, and I know you as an MSP understand this, but being able to do that, it makes this a lot more scalable for you, right? If you had to support 12 different firewalls, now you need 12 different techs that understand Meraki and Palo Alto and Fortinet and SonicWall and God knows what else. Um, if you are supporting one or two firewalls, then you just need to make sure your techs know two different firewalls or one firewall, ideally, right? Same thing here, right? You don't want to try and have your techs learn 17,000 different ways of supporting different policies, etc. You need them to understand, hey, this is general policy, and we're going to tweak it based on, for Jared's piece, hey, for this client, it's going to be session lockout at 15 minutes versus half an hour. No one should be doing 24 hours. Please don't do 24-hour session lockouts. But yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, I think this was a pretty straightforward one. So I think we've answered the question, Mike. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so as well.
All right. Cool. Do you want to ask our next question then?
Yeah. Next question comes from Amelia from Denver. She says, "Hey folks, I'm having issues demonstrating progress of my compliance offering. What's the best way for me to demonstrate progress to a client when meaningful risk reduction takes months or years?"
Ah. Well, meaningful risk reduction takes as much time as you are willing to invest in it. So if you want to invest a lot of time very quickly, you can make meaningful risk reduction very quickly. If you are going to be taking a slower and more measured approach, that's also okay, depending on the business. And it could take months and years. And so, um, we've talked about this in the past a little bit, Amelia. If you have some way of measuring or quantifying risk, regardless of what that approach is, right? Pick numerical, color based, whatever you want to do. If you can talk about a quantified approach to risk measurement, then you can start to show that reduction over time, because you can show, hey, here are the 37 risks that we have. Let's say we're going to close one a month. Okay, so one risk a month means it's going to take us 37 months or just over 3 years to reduce our risk to a level that we find acceptable, right? Again, I'm not going to say we're going to zero risk, right? Having uh, along the way, you're going to find additional risks that will go onto your risk register. But if your goal is to remove or reduce one of those risks every month, you just want to be able to show that you're reducing, like closing those out and showing the progress towards that, and that you're actually accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. If your goal is to close out 13 risks a month, well, you're going to do it in 3 months and you're going to see a much faster progress. But it's about how much time you and more importantly your client are willing to invest in this, because it's their risk, and if they don't want to invest time and money, then it's going to take longer. And if they do want to invest time and money, then it's going to take shorter, right? And so it's finding the balance that works for you and works for your client to get to a level of risk that they are comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of this is look for those low hanging fruit, right? There's going to be stuff that you can do to say, hey, you guys had this risk. You should absolutely manage it and track it. But one big thing that I've talked about with a lot of our partners is user audits. Go start doing user audits with your clients. They will see the fact that, A, you're being proactive. So you're going to start having conversations instead of, you know, hey, we've been emailing John or Cindy and they haven't responded to what's going on. Oh, they were let go 6 months ago. Oh, okay. If instead you're being proactive and saying, hey, let's go ahead and every month, every quarter, whatever you happen to be doing, here's your 365 users. Is this correct? And more to the point, sitting down with your client and saying, hey, are you guys doing user audits in your HR system, accounting system, EHR system of their HIPAA clients, right? Make sure that they're doing user audits as well. Be that proactive force that nudges them, and just start building that muscle. You'll see dividends pay with that right away. They will find people that have been gone for a long time that they forgot to offboard. You may find people that you forgot to offboard. A lot of even with employees, they tend to be hit or miss on whether they let their MSP know when they let someone go. But where they really clients really fail is with contractors and consultants. Like when that contract ends, HR is not necessarily in the loop, and so again, just making sure that everyone that is active and should be active and have those permissions has all that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you can also look at things like Microsoft Security Score and your Microsoft tenant and see, Microsoft gives you tools to look at scores and risks, and again, whether you agree with or disagree with the quantification that Microsoft provides, it's a number that you can show. Now in Microsoft, instead of starting at a high risk level and going towards zero, they're trending towards 100. Okay, fine. So you work on building that score up, right? But look for those opportunities. Again, to Mike's point, look for those quick wins within their Microsoft tenant to be able to increase their security score. So you can say, hey, look, when we started the quarter, we were at 53 and now we're at 76. We've improved your security posture. And here are the specific things that we did. Oh, and by the way, we did those in a way that was completely seamless and frictionless for you and your end users, right? Because at the end of the day, if security is creating barriers to getting work done, then your clients are going to get really frustrated with you very quickly. If you can find ways of being completely frictionless, hey, if you have the RMM installed, now you can deploy an EDR without, right? So you're increasing or decreasing risk, increasing security in a way that should be completely seamless and frictionless to the end client. Having an MDM solution in place allows you to start rolling out changes and enforcing things like lock timeouts on their machines. And so, again, finding the balance of putting security in there without providing so much friction that your end users complain. That's really what your goal is. And Mike, you look deeply skeptical of things that I've said here,
no,
so correct me.
no. You're 100% right. I was just thinking of other ways to, yes, demonstrate wins. Um, and I'm trying to think through ways that you can do that without necessarily involving the client, right? Because there's going to be stuff that you're going to be waiting on them. It's just how stuff is. Um, but working with them on their third party risk management, right? Even if they don't fully flush out their list of vendors, as they start putting in vendors, we've seen where our partners' clients have multiple solutions for the same thing, and just like their departments haven't been talking to each other and they were unaware. And so, as the MSP has gone through process with their client. They found like 3 different LMS solutions at one company, and were able to uh, have them end up with some cost savings. You're going to use that to build your relationship with them, right? They're going to trust you more when you're like, hey, guess what? I can save you $5,000 a month if we cancel 2 of these LMS solutions. Um, it also starts bubbling up other stuff as far as which vendors they're actually using MFA for. Because a lot of times MSPs and IT departments do MFA in a vacuum where they do it for 365 and call it done. But if you're tracking vendors and you can say, hey, for Salesforce, we're using MFA or we're not using MFA. One of our partners has actually been working with one of their clients, and they have a highly sensitive system that doesn't actually support MFA. And so now they're like, cool. They do support single sign-on, so now they're working to get the system tied into the Microsoft tenant to enable single sign-on, so they can actually enforce MFA at the Microsoft tenant level. But all that stuff that you do, like the more information you can learn about what the client is, what software they use, what vendors they use, what users should actually be there, all of that demonstrates those wins. And it's not necessarily always going to be risk reduction, although again, it goes back to how you communicate it because it's all risk reduction. Because if they have users that should be inactive that you find that you have them disable, you're reducing their risk. If you're finding vendors that don't have MFA that you can then tie in through single sign-on to Microsoft, you're reducing their risk. So it becomes a question of how you talk about it. But either way, you're going to be showing knowledge and interest in securing their environment and creating this a secure uh, company for them.
Yeah, no, and I think you're exactly right, Mike. When you talk about single sign-on in particular, when you can enforce single sign-on into these other systems, then that enforced single sign-on allows you to enforce MFA in your Microsoft tenant and have that essentially propagate down. Right? There's a transitive property of MFA essentially, right? It's how do I get MFA onto a system that doesn't support MFA? Well, if they support single sign-on, and more importantly, I can enforce single sign-on that allows me to essentially inherit the MFA from my Microsoft tenant or Google tenant, whatever you're using for your identity provider. And so that enforced single sign-on is a really valuable way of reducing risk, not just from an MFA standpoint, but also, let's say you forget to do a user audit one quarter. Well, if you've got enforced single sign-on, as long as you're keeping your Microsoft tenant clean or your Google tenant clean, your identity provider is kept clean with that enforced single sign-on, it reduces the risk of the fact that you might miss a quarter or a month for those user audits, right? And so that you can get risk reduction and harm reduction just by doing things that also decrease friction for operations. Right? If I have single sign-on, it's much easier for me to sign into another application. I've already authenticated once in the morning, and I can keep going and I can do my entire job throughout the day. And so that's one of those cases where enforced single sign-on actually reduces friction and increases security across the board, and it's this like double win for security. And so anywhere that you can be helping your clients out with that, you're going to make them so much happier with you and safer overall.
Yeah, and you forgot the other piece. Now, whoever's been administering that system within the client no longer has to deal with password lockouts and everything else. That becomes, because signing with Microsoft becomes again smoother, saves time internally for people, helps them operationalize that whole process. Um, and then the other piece is again, as you're working through a compliance framework, working with them on incident response, right? Let's talk about reducing risk. Figure out who's going to be on incident response, work with them on that, work with them on scheduling the tabletop exercise. A lot of companies that we talk to think they're fine, and then they go through a tabletop exercise and they're like, oh, wow, we didn't think of 30 things. um, and that's fine. That's the point of the tabletop, right? So again, going back to demonstrating the reduction of risk, you'll go through that, you'll fine tune things, you'll realize, oh, wait, we need to add Mary in accounting onto the incident response team because whatever reason, right? But go through all that. Again, I'm trying to think of things that you can do quickly at the beginning to demonstrate stuff versus other pieces that you'll do as you actually get further down the compliance journey. But yeah.
Yeah, and let me just poke at the incident response and tabletops real quickly, right? a lot of folks think that you have to have a super formal or heavyweight incident response or tabletop exercise in order to get any real value out of it. And the reality is, yes, there is a lot of value that comes from those, but just by asking some questions, you can actually get the client to kind of game things out on their own without needing to do any sort of formal tabletop exercise.
Yeah.
Hey, I noticed that you only like all of your assets are in one physical location, and it's in Kansas. What happens if a tornado comes through? Oh, I didn't think about that. Right. I noticed that you don't have all of the decisions have to be routed through the CEO. What happens if the CEO is on vacation or in the hospital?
Not allowed.
Like, does the business grind to a halt? How do people get paid? Can you run payroll when HR is in the hospital or on vacation? Right? So just asking some of these basic questions, and you don't need to like contrive this massive scenario. It's just like, hey, I was just thinking, what happens if X, Y, or Z? Like I noticed what appears to be a single point of failure, and the single point of failure does not need to be just in the cybersecurity realm, right? If we think about risk reduction for the organization, think about the risks that the organization faces. Put yourself in their shoes. What would keep you awake at night? Cool. Let me just ask a question there. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. And maybe they have, in which case you learn something about your client, but it shows that proactivity that is going to just engender a lot more trust from the client. And so you're going to be a lot happier. They're going to be a lot happier with you. You're going to understand their business a lot better. And it allows you to work together towards overall risk reduction.
Yeah. And I think this kind of ties really well back to the first question as well, where you guys have the added advantage of having a multitude of clients. So you can see, hey, we had this issue with client 1. Let's go to clients 3 through 9 because they are in the same industry and say, hey, have you guys thought about this? Right? And again, it helps work the incident response piece. It helps work the being proactive with your clients and having those higher level conversations. It kind of brings it all together into a nice bow. And then later on, as you're kind of walking down the compliance journey, whether you're talking to them about business continuity, disaster recovery, like mapping out their business processes, all that stuff, they're going to see those wins. But again, I think right now the point of your question was, what are the easy things to do quickly to show progress versus getting in the weeds?
Yep. All right. Well, I think we've sufficiently beat this one up, Amelia, but please, as always, reach back out, ask any follow-up questions that you might have. Mike, what happens, or what should somebody do if they want to get their own questions answered?
Yeah. Head over to blacksmithinfosec.com/ask. Submit your questions. We'd love to answer them. If you have other ways of communicating with us, pigeons, smoke signals, etc., we accept that as well.
Yeah. Awesome. And if you learned something today, please forward this on to a friend, help spread the word. And if you're not already, please hit that follow button on whatever your favorite podcasting platform is. We'd love your support, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Get NIST-y.